Welcome to episode 182 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing writer-director Ritchie Greer. He recently did a $1,500 short film called Lost and Found, which you can watch for free over at screeningnow.com. We walked through his entire process for writing, directing, and producing this film, so stay tuned for that interview. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcasts, and then just look for episode number 182. I just want to mention a free webinar that I'm doing on Wednesday, August 9th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. It's called How to Effectively Market Your Screenplay and Sell It. I'm going to go through all the various online channels that are available to screenwriters and give you my unfiltered opinion of them. I get questions all the time about the Blacklist, Ink Tip, and various contests. So in this free webinar, I'm going to talk about my experience with these various services. Again, this website is completely free. Don't worry if you can't make it to the live event. I'll be recording this event, so if you sign up, you'll get a link to the recorded event after it happens. To sign up, just go to www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/free webinar. And free webinar is all lowercase, all one word. Of course, I will link to this in the show notes as well. Anyone who is already on my email list, I will email you details so you don't have to sign up for the webinar specifically. You will have access to it just by being on my email list. So once again, I'm still working on post-production on my crime action thriller feature film, The Pinch. I don't have a lot of updates, but things are moving along slowly but surely. My special effects guy just emailed me the closing credits. Looks great, so that's moving along nicely. And that's the little ending credit sequence where it highlights the main actors in the film. It's a little clip of the actor with a little freeze frame and then their name along with that. So it took a little bit of effects to get that all in place. I also wrote up the scrolling credits, and this is just, you know, putting everybody's credit into the end credits, all that scrolling stuff. Had to look up what the boilerplate, legal stuff and just all that stuff. I worked on that over the last couple of weeks. I got that to my editor, so now he's going to be typing that up and putting that into the end of the film. I listened to the first pass of the score last week. I'd say that's almost done. I had a few notes, but overall, I would say my composer is pretty much done. Again, there's a few notes, so maybe we're at like the 90% with the score, so that's great that's moving along. I'm going to be looking at some color correction footage this week. My colorist sent me a new pass of that, so I've got that to work on. So again, everything is moving along slowly but surely. Also, I want to mention a live webinar that I'm going to be doing in August where I will go through all the steps of production, of producing a micro-budget feature film. The webinar is called, of all things, The Pinch, producing a micro-budget feature film. I'm going to do this online webinar on Wednesday, August 23rd at 10 a.m. Pacific time. I'm going to charge a small fee to attend, but if you're looking to produce your own micro-budget feature film or just looking to learn about writing micro-budget feature films, I think this webinar will offer tremendous value to you. I'm going to go through every aspect of production, how to write a micro-budget script, how to raise money for a micro-budget project, and then of course how to do pre-production, production, and every aspect of post-production. As I close in on completion of my own micro-budget feature film, The Pinch, I think this is a great time to do this webinar. Everything is very fresh in my mind, so I'll be able to answer any questions with relevant, fresh information. Any and all questions that get asked, I will answer. That's a big part of this webinar, is just answering the questions. I'm going to be going through my own budget line by line so you can see exactly how I spent the money that I had, and hopefully that will be something that will help you in your own budgeting. If this sounds like something you might like to learn more about, just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/class. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplay.com/class, and I will of course be linking to this in the show notes as well. So that's what I'm working on. Now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm interviewing writer-director Ritchie Greer. Here is the interview. Welcome, Ritchie, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Hey, it's good to be here.
So to start out, maybe you can give us kind of an overview of your background. Where are you from, and how did you get interested in the entertainment industry?
Basically, after college, I moved to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and I got a job in a big nightclub called Studebakers. And I quickly moved up to be the entertainment director there. And basically my job was to design skits and shows to the music and choreograph dances and just basically use my creativity to try to bring in customers. And I was there for 16 years, and it was a very successful business. But my passion turned to writing. And in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, there's not a lot of film industry there, so I knew I had to make the move to LA, and here I am.
Okay, perfect. So how did you make that transition? Did you start, while you're working as the creative director at this nightclub, did you start to write scripts? Did you start to shoot, short films? What was sort of that transition like for those?
Well, what I had to do was I wanted to write a screenplay, but I didn't know how. So I know there's all kinds of websites and stuff there to learn, but what I did was, this was probably 15, 16 years ago, I went to the library and they had the script that one of my favorite movies of all time, Shawshank Redemption. So I read the script and I was watching basically how they put it all together, and that was my first introduction as far as how to make a screenplay and how to write it. And of course, after that, then you read books and so on. But I just knew that my passion was creating stories, and I was going to follow that passion no matter what anybody else said. So that's how it basically started, was me going to that library and reading that screenplay.
Okay, perfect. How many scripts had you completed before you made the transition to LA?
I probably had, I would say, 7 or 8.
Okay.
Maybe even more, but yeah.
And had you started to try and maybe query agents and managers and production companies? Had you started to do anything in terms of marketing those scripts, contests?
Absolutely. I blasted the internet with query letters and so on, and didn't have any success. And I knew that there's so many screenwriters like me out there that they get flooded with those, and I knew that the way to make it would be able to to meet people and shake hands and be face to face with people that make things happen. So that's the reason why I moved to LA.
Yeah. And I just want to take a little bit of a detour here on your move to LA. This is a question I get so frequently. Hey, can I be a screenwriter without moving to LA? And maybe we can get your take on that. Has it been worth it? Was it worth all the the turmoil, and moving is such a big thing? Was it worth the effort to come to LA and be here as opposed to being somewhere else?
100% yes. I had very little success on the East Coast. When you're on the computer and you're sending out things, you have every once in a while you might get a bite, but by moving out here, you really get to meet people in the industry, and like I say, you're face to face with them, and you build relationships with them. So that's something that you can do over the internet and so on. But your chances go up dramatically whenever you're face to face with someone.
Yeah, sure. Sound advice. What was that preparation of moving to LA like for you? Did you have friends and family out here that you could kind of tell you where in LA to move? Did you have some money saved up, kind of a runway? Did you have a job set up? Because these are all the big issues that people are asking me, when they're thinking about making that transition.
You have to realize that you're going to make a huge sacrifice. When I came out here, I had no place to stay. I had no job. I only had 1 or 2 people that I actually knew here in LA, but it wasn't someone I was going to crash on the couch with or anything like that. I knew that if I moved out here, it would be all on me, and I just had to knew that chances are maybe I would be sleeping in my car or sleeping who knows where. But I knew that if I didn't make the move out here, my chances was going to decrease as far as fulfilling my dream.
Yeah. And what's your advice for people that are coming out here? I got the advice right before I moved to LA to move into the Valley Village, North Hollywood area. It's centrally located, fairly inexpensive by LA standards. What was your experience? Where did you end up first residing, and how did you find that place? And any advice for people that are thinking of making the transition now?
All right, so I remember I was sitting in a little bar. It was like, and they were showing the Pittsburgh Steelers football game, which I'm a big fan of. And I realized, I knew that night that I had no place to stay, nowhere to go. So I looked on Craigslist, and I just happened to see that someone was renting out a room that was just a couple blocks down from where I was at. So I watched the Steelers play and win the game. So it got me in a good mood. And then I went and I met with a guy and ended up on Hollywood Boulevard. And basically back then, you know, things have changed so much in the 7 years that I've been here. Basically back then you could get like a place for, you know, $1,600 for a 2-bedroom or something like that. So anyway, I ended up meeting the guy, and he was a drummer and a really cool guy. So I moved in with him that night. If not, I was just going to sleep in my car because I was determined to, no matter what, I was not going to go home. I was going to make it in this business no matter what.
Yeah, so good story. So let's dig into your short film, Lost and Found. Maybe to start out, you can give us a quick logline or pitch for that film.
Well, basically, it's about a girl who goes on a journey to uncover why her dad died, and she sort of follows in his footsteps on this journey. And that's basically how it's sort of a little bit like Wild with Reese Witherspoon and stuff. So she discovers things about herself and stuff about her father that she didn't know before she went on this journey.
Okay, perfect. Where did this idea come from?
Well, I mean, when you don't have funding and you have passion, you have to think about, okay, how am I going to make this film? So what you got to do is, okay, first thing you got to think of is locations. What do I have access to? I knew I could use my apartment, and I knew that I could use some wood somewhere. And basically that was how it all started. My daughter, who just turned 18, moved from the East Coast here with me, and she wanted to be an actress. So I thought, let me write something for her, and that way it could showcase her talents. And that's how it sort of all worked together, and that's how Lost and Found got created and started.
Okay, perfect. Let's talk just about your writing process a little bit. This probably, you know, the movie's about 25 minutes, so I'm assuming the script's about 25 pages. How long did it take you to write the script? And even break it out into like idea phase versus opening up final draft and then writing the pages. Right.
You know, with Lost and Found, it was my first short film because, as I mentioned before, I came out here with like 8 or 9 screenplays, and now I'm up to 18. So I've been working away at it. But this was my first short film, but it really didn't take that long. Once I get an idea, it's almost like a seed that is planted in my head, and it just grows, and next thing you know, you have a movie. So I would say that Lost and Found took me about a week to a week and a half to write. And you know, I was focused on the locations because I knew what locations I could use, and I knew what characters that I had become friends with here. That's another thing about being in LA that's very important. Not only is it about connecting with people in the industry that sell your films or whatever, but you also meet great people that are actors that are very passionate about being actors and who love being, you know, who follow their dreams as well. And so I have friends that are actors, and I use them on the film.
Yeah, perfect. There's a ton of voiceover in this script, and I'm just curious to get your take on voiceover. Okay. This is something I've discussed on the podcast with other writers. You know, it's a lot of times people sort of poo-poo voiceover. This used it a lot. Was that planned? Did you shoot the movie and then feel like you needed it later? Was that written into the script early on? Maybe just your thoughts on voiceover in general.
Was it written in the script? Yes and no. It was written, but we added some more to it because I thought the narrator, you know, it took you on this journey, and I blame Morgan Freeman because I love the guy, and I think he's an amazing actor. And when I hear his voice, you know, I just love it. So hopefully one day I can work with him. But I like voiceovers. I have nothing against them as an independent filmmaker. So I'm a big fan of them.
Perfect. So let's dig into the actual production of this. Okay. Once you had the script ready, did you know from the beginning you were going to produce this? Like that was the whole idea, write something that I can produce? Absolutely.
Like I said, I knew it. I knew the locations, actors that I was friends with that I could use. And I knew what it would take. You know, obviously you've got to have a good camera guy, which I was able to get through Craigslist. Believe it or not, this is a guy that I didn't know until I put an ad out there, and I actually got 2 great camera people. And also got a good sound person. So, you know, if you got that core, if you've got a script and you have a camera guy and a sound guy, and you've got a couple of actors, man, you can make a magic happen. You really can. So, obviously, most of the times when you drive to LA, when you're driving around, you see like 15, 16, big trucks lined up on the side of the road shooting something. Hey, maybe one day that'll be us. But as for now, we'll take a couple cars and a camera, and we'll make some good things happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you mind talking about the budget of this? How much money you spent on it?
I think all in all, what we did was probably around 1,500. Obviously, when people are working for credit and so on, you definitely want to take care of them. You want to feed them, and obviously you want to have props and all the things that you need. But I think in all is around $1,500 for the music and the special effects and everything. So, like I said, it's a very, very small budget, but we're very proud of the way it turned out.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Do you know what kind of camera you guys shot this on?
A DSLR, just one of those cameras. Sean, who is my DP, I have a Canon, and he has, I'm not sure if it's a Canon or not, I think it's a different model, but he has a couple lenses, and I love, when we use lenses, I love dropping the focus behind our actors. I think it looks more movie-ish, and so on, and I think it gave it a great look, and there's a lot of rich colors, and I think that he should be nominated for production photography, because I think it's beautiful colors, and I think it's shot really well.
Yeah, perfect. So let's talk about the locations. You keep talking about, obviously, using stuff like your apartment. That's pretty easy because you're in there and there's not really a lot anybody's going to do to bother you. But let's talk about the woods a little bit. One of the things, I just did a feature film, and one of the things I found, all these things you're talking about, there's a huge, deep talent pool in LA, but I would say the flip side of shooting in LA is locations, I think, are actually more difficult to find because everybody is wanting money, and you need permits, and if you go outside of LA, people are in awe of the film process, so they'll let you shoot in their diner for free because they just think it's cool.
Sure.
In LA, they're thinking paycheck. How did you find this woods? Did you need permits? Did you just shoot it guerrilla style?
We did guerrilla style, and you're absolutely right about the difference between LA and other places. Right now, we're looking at shooting a family film, and I've been in contact with my hometown in North Carolina, and they're ready to roll out the red carpet for us. Because it's a cool thing to have a movie being shot in your town, whether it's a small production or a big production. Here, you see it everywhere. And people get a little, they're not fans of it because maybe it's blocking the traffic or the driveway or whatever. But when you go outside of LA, it's a different ball game. And there's people that really enjoy the process. And it's a very exciting thing, and it should be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So where is this woods? That was in the LA area, the woods that you used?
I think it's in San Bernardino Forest, up in that area. Okay. It was a little bit of a drive. I think we drove like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to get there. And I drove around and found a great location, and we shot there. And then obviously we also shot on the Pacific Coast Highway, one of those turnoffs that you can go and look over the ocean and so on. But like I said, it's a lot of beautiful scenery. Yeah,
yeah. And no problems. You didn't get harassed by park rangers or anything else?
No. Like I said, it's not like we had 5 or 6 big trucks. We had a couple cars and a lot of passion.
Okay, perfect. And you keep mentioning that you had a lot of friends that were actors. Is that all the actors that you used were people that you knew?
Yes. For this one, it was all actors that I knew. Just recently I shot a teaser trailer to a family film that we put on LA Casting, and we shot it and it came out really good. So that was people that I didn't know that just came in and auditioned and stuff. So there's different ways you can use your friends that are, now they can be friends, but they also have to be talented and good actors and stuff. So, but for this one, I used my friends that were also talented actors.
Okay. And you've talked a little bit about the crew. You found some of them on Craigslist, and I found a lot of my crew on Craigslist, so that's an excellent resource for people.
Absolutely.
But maybe you can just describe what your crew looked like. Was it literally just the sound guy and the DP? Did you have a first AD, PAs, anything else on set?
We had the person that ran the sound was Amani, and she also did the slate. So she would slate it and then jump over there and get the boom pole and so on. And then we just had 2 camera people, and that was it. And we were rocking and rolling.
And you're shooting 2 cameras throughout the process just to speed things up?
We did through a couple of days, but some days Sienna couldn't be there, so the majority was shot with Sean, my main guy, and stuff. And like I said, his work is incredible.
Yeah. And did you find that having two cameras sped things up? This was a conversation I had with my own cinematographer, that it almost seems like then you've got to get everything lined up, and it actually can. We felt it actually might slow us down at times.
You know, I like using one camera. I mean, you can use two cameras. I think it could speed you up in some scenarios, but I love the shoulder rig. I love movement in my shots. So when me and Sean are together and he's got that shoulder rig and got the camera hooked up, man, we can really get some great shots, and it doesn't take that long. But I do see the benefit of having two cameras. You know, that way it matches better whenever you're editing. For one thing, a high-budget film, use one camera guy the whole day with a shoulder rig all day long. And I'm thinking, that's what I do. And this is a huge movie. And to come to find out, I asked somebody, I was like, who is that guy, that director? Do you know what he's doing? Because that's what I do. And it was the director from the Dallas Buyers Club. So I think, okay, if he can do it, then I can do it and feel okay with it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So once you had this film completed or in the can, maybe you can describe the post-production process a little bit, and how did you get those people? Did you edit it yourself? Did you find an editor? Obviously, there's a lot of good music in this. You must have found a composer. Just talk us through what the post-production process looked like.
Post-production, what I usually do is I edit the first version myself. I use Adobe Premiere Pro CS6. And then I'll pass it on to my other editor, which is Ashton, and he's really good at what he does. He's a specialist, so he'll clean up my mistakes, and then we'll sort of we'll talk about the changes and stuff, and then once it's done, then I take it and we will go forward with sound. Now, a funny story about how I got my score guy is he reached out to me. His name is Scott Greer. And he's got the same last name as me, so he just wanted to connect with me and wanted to know if we were related. And I was like, no, we're not related, I don't think. But he's like, well, I do music and stuff. And I was like, really? And because of my last name, I was able to connect with this guy, and he's super talented with his music. And that's how that music all came to come down to because of the last name, and that's how we sort of connected.
Okay, perfect. So let's talk about then, once you're done with the film, what was your sort of marketing approach? Did you submit to film festivals? Maybe talk about that process a little bit. What did you do with the film once it was complete?
What I did was I basically submitted it to 2 film festivals, and I was very fortunate because one, it made it to the semifinals, and the other one, it won Best Drama. And the criteria for me was I wanted to make sure that the film festivals were here in LA. And that way, if they did choose my film to show it, it would be at no cost for the whole crew and cast to go and watch it instead of going all across the United States and so on. So I wanted to be an LA film festival. I knew that film festivals all over the world are they're good, but an LA film festival, they have so many people submitting to them. I know that if you can win one of those or at least place, that you're doing something right. So I was very fortunate to do well when I submitted it to the film festivals here in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Do you feel like they helped you? Did you make some contacts? Was there just anything to sort of help your career along the way by being in these 2 festivals?
Well, I think when you're in a film festival and it wins, it places it. For if you like, so I go to an investor and I'm looking for money and stuff like that. When you won something, it makes them feel better about cutting you a check for sure. And it also goes along with if you're talking to actors or producers of any sort, to let them know, hey, yeah, this is I shot this and it won. It gives them a peace of mind that they this guy may have something to offer in the film community and so on. So I think that's one of the best things about it is the notoriety that you get saying, hey, it was against a whole bunch of other films and it rose to the top. So I think that helped us.
Yeah, perfect. What was kind of your goal? Just taking a step back, before you started this project, what was your sort of goal for it?
Well, I wanted to get some exposure for my daughter, who I think is an amazing actress, which she was the lead in the actress. And and she'd never been in front of a camera before. So before she's sitting in front of a camera that's a high budget or whatever, I wanted her to basically show me she could do it, and prove to herself that she could do it. And like I said, I think she did a great job. So that was one goal, was to get her used to the whole process. She didn't even know what go back to one. She didn't know what that meant or whatever. So it helped her in that sense, and it helped me to because I love working with actors, whether they're our daughter or whatever, and creating stories is is a passion for me. So that was I knew that I could shoot the film, and I knew it wouldn't cost me a lot of money, and I knew through the contacts that I had met since I've been here that we can make it look pretty cool, and that's what we did.
Yeah, perfect. So let's talk about your current film, The Electrician. Maybe you can give us just a quick pitch and log line on that one.
Okay, so The Electrician is about a guy named Mike who is an electrician by trade, and he marries this girl and comes to find out that she is a witch, and later learns that his family has been cursed because of something that happened a long time ago. So he is on a journey to try to stay alive after these witches come after him. His great-great-grandfather was the head judge when it came to the Salem witch trials, and the witches that did survive that put a curse on his family and his bloodline. And Mike, our lead character, is part of that family. So he's trying to find a way to stay alive and find a way to end the curse that has been placed upon him.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Yeah.
And just before we started the interview, we talked briefly about this, and I thought you had an interesting approach to this film. It's a feature film, and maybe you can just describe sort of what you've done so far and what your plan is for this feature.
Okay, so what we did was I used a lot of the people that we use for Lost and Found because I had a lot of confidence in them, obviously. So I wrote the script, and I decided, let's go ahead and shoot what we can. We ended up shooting half the movie, which was 45 minutes, using some different actors, but still the same pretty much crew. And my thought was, well, if we can shoot it and make it look amazing, then we can pitch it to producers or companies and say, hey, look at this product. Would you be interested in give us the funding to finish the film? Or after people have viewed it, have said that it would make a great miniseries, which is another possibility for The Electrician. So we're sort of looking at that right now. We're working on the score, and we're working on the special effects because they have to be on point when it comes to movies like this. Mm-hmm. So, and it should be done in the next 2 or 3 weeks. But my whole goal was to shoot something that looked amazing, and then I can show people and say, okay, this is what we got. Instead of going to people and saying, this is another reason why I shoot trailers, is because it's a lot easier for them to see your vision than for you to tell them your vision. So I like to shoot a trailer and say, okay, here it is. What do you think? And, that's opened some doors for us.
Yeah. So when you say you've shot 45 minutes, is it like a linear 45 minutes, like the first 45 minutes of the film, or it's just 45 minutes of, the scenes that you could shoot easily?
Yeah, we shot the first 45 minutes of the film.
Okay. And so
go ahead.
Why not just complete the whole film, just shoot the whole film out and try and just distribute it and make money that way?
That is a possibility, but the second half of the film has a lot more special effects and a lot more locations. So I wrote the beginning to be really character driven because I knew that we had my business partner and I went up to her and I said, okay, what locations can we use? This is how The Electrician started. And she said, well, my husband owns a electrical shop, and we could shoot there. And I was like, we could shoot at her house. And I was like, well, I know where there's a cave at. And that's how The Electrician started, just because her husband owns an electrical company. And I was like, okay, great. I'm gonna write a screenplay around that. Yeah. And I wanted to make it something a little more edgier than what I'd written before. I do a lot of family films. So that's how The Electrician was born. And I would love to finish it, and I think we're going to, but it's going to take a little bit of funding to complete it because there's a lot of special effects and there's a lot of different locations that we'll be going to the way I finished the script and wrote it.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
So how can people see Lost and Found?
They can go to screening now. It's a great website. They've got not only short films, they also have feature films that they can check out. So it's really a great concept. You know, it's similar to Hulu and Netflix and so on. You just go and subscribe, and you get to watch it for free, which you can't beat free. And there's a lot of other great short films that are on that website as well. So I highly recommend Screening Now.
Okay, perfect. I will get that link, and I will put it in the show notes too, so people can link to that. What's the best way for people to keep up with what you're doing? Twitter, Facebook, blog, anything, website, anything you're comfortable sharing, just say it now.
Sure. You can always go and friend me on Facebook, which is Ritchie Greer. And also we have a company called Magic Arrow Films. So you go to magicarrowfilms.com. That's another way. And you can also go to ritchiegreer.com, which there's a list of all my screenplays and short films and so on there. So a lot of different ways to get a hold of me. Perfect. So you have no excuse.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So I will round all that stuff up, and we'll put it in the show notes and link over to it. Ritchie, I appreciate your coming on the show and talking with me today. Fascinating story, and well done on Lost and Found. I can't wait to see the Electrician when it's finished.
Yes, and also just a quick note, one thing I also do to help the process as far as getting your stories out there, what I'll do is I'll write a screenplay, and then if I think it'll make a great book, I'll turn it into a novel, because you know how many books are turned into movies. So that's another thing that you can also do. If you write a screenplay and you think, wow, man, you know, this could be a great book, then you need to do that. Take that next step. So when you go and you pitch your products, you can say, oh, here's a screenplay, and also I've turned it into a novel as well. So that's another way of getting your stories out there. I have 5 books on Amazon right now. So that's another thing. If people want to read any of my books, they can go to put in Ritchie Greer, on Amazon, and a whole list of the books that I have right now is on there. So you do whatever you can to get your word and get your work out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sound advice. And do you actually write these books? Do you pay someone to come in and convert your screenplay to a book, or you wrote the books?
I do both.
Okay.
I do both. Some of them they're 100% mine, and other ones I'll use a ghostwriter to come in and do what they do best. Mm-hmm. But as long as it's still my story and it's still the characters and everything like that, it's still even though you use a ghostwriter every once in a while, it's still from you. You're creating the characters, you're creating the stories, and so on. So yeah.
Okay. Well, perfect, Ritchie. Once again, I really appreciate your coming on and talking with me. Good luck with this film.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I just want to mention 2 things I'm doing at Selling Your Screenplay to help screenwriters find producers who are looking for material. First, I've created a monthly newsletter that will be sent directly to producers. Every member of SYS Select can submit 1 logline per newsletter. I went and emailed my large database of producers and asked them if they would like to receive this monthly newsletter of pitches. So far, I have well over 400 producers who have signed up to receive it. These producers are hungry for material and happy to read scripts from new writers. So if you want to participate in this pitch newsletter and get your script into the hands of lots of producers, sign up at sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. Secondly, I've partnered with one of the premier paid screenwriting leads sites so I can syndicate their leads to SYS Select members. There are lots of great paid leads coming in each week from our partner. Recently, I've been getting 5 to 10 high-quality paid leads per week. These are producers and production companies who are actively looking to buy material or are looking to hire a screenwriter for a specific project. If you sign up for SYS Select, you'll get these leads emailed directly to you several times per week. These leads run the gamut from production companies looking for a specific type of spec script to producers looking to hire a screenwriter to write up one of their ideas or properties. Producers are looking for shorts, they're looking for features, TV and web series pilots, so it's a huge array of different types of projects that these producers are looking for, and these leads are of course exclusive to our partner and SYS Select members. To sign up, just go to sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. So on the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing writer-director John Butler. He is a British filmmaker who recently did a film called Handsome Devil. This is a coming-of-age story about a prep school that loves rugby. It's a really excellent film, and it's not it's not the sort of typical low budget genre film that I talk about a lot on this film. I know there's a lot of filmmakers out there, they want to do these sort of coming of age sorts of stories, semi-autobiographical coming of age stories. And I think this is a real great example of one of those stories. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. To wrap things up, I just want to touch on a few things from today's interview with Ritchie. Once again, if you haven't already checked it out, you can watch Lost and Found at screeningnow.com. It's completely free, so definitely check that out if you haven't already done so. The discussion that I just had with Ritchie will have a lot more context if you go and watch the film. So what I'm doing is running a series of these short film showcases, and each one will be at a slightly different budget range. I started a few weeks ago with an interview with filmmaker Mark Hanley, who did a short film called Dark Afternoon, and he literally spent less than $200 producing that film. It was episode number 170, so check that out if you haven't already. And then in a few weeks, I'll be having another filmmaker on, a fellow named Joe Taylor, and he did a short film for around $4,000, and that's, you know, sort of the next budget range up. And then a few weeks after that, I'll be interviewing Sonny Dion, who did a film in the $15,000 range. So it's a wide spectrum of budgets, and hopefully you'll kind of get an idea what these various budget levels look like, and hopefully you can kind of plan accordingly, you know, depending on where you are in your life and what your financial situation is, how much money you could potentially raise. Hopefully one of these films will maybe work as a template for your own short film. I talk about this often, but really, I really feel like just, you know, if you're starting out as a screenwriter, you don't have any credits, I think writing short films is an excellent way to get your career started. It's fairly easy to get these films produced and get a credit. These will show up on IMDb, and those films, you know, just having some IMDb credits, it separates you from the pack, but you will learn a tremendous amount by doing these short films. You'll learn a lot about the writing process, obviously the production process, the realities of production. Again, just a quick little tip on if you're writing shorts. I don't necessarily think you have to write, direct, and produce. That might not be what you want to do. I totally get that, and that's totally fine. If you just want to be the writer, you know, there's millions of people, I don't know about millions, but there's lots and lots of people looking for short films. There's lots of directors looking for short scripts. There's lots of producers looking for short scripts. One excellent resource I always recommend, if you go to the Craigslist writing gigs section, you can just do a keyword search under that Los Angeles writing gig section for screenplay or screenwriting, and you will almost every week you will see a handful of people looking for short films. I haven't looked in many years in the New York City section, but I would guess there's probably a few there. There may even be a few in your local town. If you live in Austin or Chicago or even a smaller town, Minneapolis, you know, there might be some filmmakers in there, and just check out your local section of Craigslist for people looking for short films. Now, you're not going to make any money or you never know. You might get paid $100 or something, but for the most part, these filmmakers are just passionate people who want to jumpstart their career, whether it's a director or producer or maybe even an actor looking for a project. So they're not going to have big budgets. They're not going to be paying the writers, and that's totally fine. You're never going to get rich doing short films. I don't think you should even expect to make any money. If you make a little money, great. If you don't, though, that's not the point. The point is to just get a produced credit, meet some filmmakers, meet some actors, and just start to network and start to build your resume. I had a chat I was at a conference this weekend, and I had a chat with a young lady who had a friend, and she heard that I had Selling Your Screenplay, and she kept, I have a friend that's a screenwriter, and he's written a couple scripts. And, you know, she said, well, what about your services, and how much do they cost? And, you know, my response to her, and it's the response that I give other people when they email me, if you listen to my podcast, no matter what the service is, whether it be the lead service that I'm offering screenwriting leads through SYS Select, whether it be the email and fax blast service that I offer, you know, I've had some of these people that have used these services and had success. I've had some of those people on the podcast. You can see some of the success stories if you go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/success if you want to see those. But, you know, the advice I gave her, she was like, oh, well, what service should he use? And I was thinking about it. I was like, you know, the best thing to do is to get some experience. The services that I offer, or any of these services, whether it be Inktip or the Blacklist, probably any of these services, if you had the people that are going to succeed with them, most likely are people that have success. And I know this for a fact with my own services. And again, You can go listen to the people that I've had on the podcast. You can go look at the success stories on my website. People that have a little bit of experience, and I'm not talking about, selling studio level scripts, but a little bit of experience. They tend to do better with these services because they're more experienced. It just stands to reason. If you have some experience, you get better. Your scripts get better. Your writing gets better. You understand how to write a script that can be produced. And, so her question was, well, what does that mean? What does that experience have? Does that mean someone that sold scripts? And I was like, no, you don't necessarily I don't think you necessarily have to have sold numerous scripts to get value out of my services. But I think doing a few short films, I think that's the type of experience that helps you. And I've had some of those filmmakers. Jordan Imiola is such a filmmaker. He's done a ton of shorts. He has optioned and sold some scripts through my email and fax blast. I've had him on my podcast. I can't remember what episode that was. I'll link to it in the show notes. But, before he met me, or I won't even say before he met me, but before he did the email and fax blast to my service and had the success, he was out there doing little web series, web shorts, and putting them online. And he was building his own resume. He wasn't asking for permission. He wasn't selling tons of scripts, but, he had a lot of experience by the time he had some success, with feature films. And I think he got an option and a sale through my email and fax blast service. And, but he had built, a resume of work. And it wasn't, you don't need to ask permission. This is not something you have to sit back and wait for someone to buy your short film script. No, you've got to just go out and make things happen for yourself. And that experience will help you immensely. And these short films, most likely, they're not going to go viral, and they are not in and of themselves going to catapult you to the next level. But that experience, the subtle experience of doing a few short films, will give you a lot of context of how filmmaking works, how writing a script that can actually be shot works. There's just a lot of things you're going to pick up by going through this process. And again, there's no excuses for not doing this. You don't have to wait for someone to call you and say, I'll buy your short film script. You just have to decide that you're serious about screenwriting and you want to make this happen, and go out and do it. As I mentioned earlier in this little segment, Mark Hanley did a short film for $200. I think that's probably within the reach, I hope, of most people who listen to this podcast, spending $200 on a short film. I think he shot it on his iPad. He used a bunch of iPad apps and iPhone apps to do editing and special effects on it. And he walks through it. Again, it's episode number 170, but he walks through all of these processes. But this is the sort of experience that you need to get to that next level. And again, it's not going to be like a linear progression where, you do 3 short films and then, you do a feature film and then all of a sudden you're writing studio scripts. It's not quite that simple, but I can tell you again, who's someone been doing this for a while and sees who is succeeding and who is not succeeding. It's the people that are actually doing things and making things happen for themselves. Those are the people that are advancing in their careers. And this is the first step. And again, pretty much anybody, I would say, who is listening to this podcast probably can afford $200 to do a short film. And so again, the only reason not to do it is that you just don't want to do it. And then it's the question, are you really committed to becoming a screenwriter? Is this something you're really passionate about doing? Do you really want to succeed? And, maybe producing and maybe directing, maybe those are things you don't necessarily want to do. But if you're willing to put up a little bit of money, write the script, I bet you could put an ad on Craigslist and you could find a producer and you could find a director and you could sort of make those things happen instead of just constantly waiting for someone else to make things happen for you. Anyway, that's the show. Thank you for listening.